Hello, everyone. This is Eric Lundquist, and I'd like to welcome you to the DOE's Home Energy Score Assessor and Partner webinar, and thank you for joining today. Today's webinar will be conducted by my colleague, Glenn Dickey, and Glenn will be explaining the changes and improvements to the new version of the scoring tool, scheduled to go live this coming Tuesday, February 12th. I'll attempt to keep everyone's audio input muted for now. But if you have any questions during or after Glenn's presentation, please feel free to type them in to the chat log, and I'll try to get a chance to relay them to Glenn, who will do his best to answer. So I'll turn it over to Glenn.
Thank you very much, Eric. So as Eric indicated, we're going to go through, we've got a new version of the home energy scoring tool coming out. A lot of it is functionality changes, so new dashboards, new roles for different people, a different way of interacting with the tool itself. I'm going to go through and show you all of those things. The biggest thing we have to show you is that we can now copy and paste a home energy score and edit the pasted version. I know we've been promising that for a long time. We're finally going to deliver that. As Eric indicated, we actually will move it the night of Monday the 11th, so that it will be available to you on the morning of Tuesday the 12th. We will send out new documentation before, probably on that Monday, the 11th. We're still cleaning a little bit of it up, making sure that everything aligns the way it should be. So it's not quite ready to go yet, but we will get all that out to everybody before this all goes out. So I'm going to just jump into this. I'm going to do this in kind of an order. We're going to start off with the assessor and what they're going to see now. Then we'll go and look at the partner and how their view looks. And then we will look at the new QA and mentor roles. I will admit that I've got 3 browsers open to try to streamline this. If you see me jumping around, it's because I've lost my way and I'm in the wrong browser. I will get back to where I belong and try to continue on without too much confusion. As Eric indicated, if you've got questions as I go along, enter those into the chat box. I will stop from time to time and we'll do a review of those and try to get your questions answered as quickly as possible from when you provide them. So this is a new assessor dashboard. We've kind of changed the overall look of things. You log into it the same way as always. I'm not going to show you the login because it's running a little slow because we're not on the production server, so things are running a little slow here. But you get in the same way as you always have. But this is the new view. One of the things that we've got is what we call the ancestry. So because we are now able to copy and paste scores, we can link them together. So rather than just having them ordered the way they were before, whether it was by date or ID or something like that, we actually have them grouped by the addresses, so you can see them all together. This little ancestry button here opens and closes those. If there's just one you want to look at, you can click on the little button here. I skipped a step. The filter, it'll usually open however you left it when you last were here. So whether you left the filter open or closed, it will be the same way when you come back. To see these things, you open the filter. Again, we've got the ancestry button here that'll open and close each of those sets of scores. If you've archived anything, I haven't archived anything in this view, but if you've got some old scores that you don't need to look at anymore, you can put those away, take them off of your dashboard. If for some reason you need to go back and take a look at one of those, you click on the Include Archive. And in this case, you also have to hit the Go button but hit the include archive. That will then show all of the scores you've ever done. And then you can use your filters up here, whether if you know the building ID, you can enter that. You can enter the address. For those of you who are using an external ID, you could use that number to sort as well. So those are to filter. To sort, you just click on the arrows in the field that you're most interested in or the one you're looking at. So you can sort your addresses. Maybe you want to look at it by state, zip code, type. The type doesn't work exactly like you might want because of this, again, this ancestry, this nested sort of thing. It will sort them based on the top level score. So the result there may not be exactly what you're looking for, but it does give you the choice for doing sorts to help you find what you're looking for. When you're ready to start a new score, you click on the new assessment button. We've already done that here. Much like the other one, it's going to check your address, give you some choices. One thing too I need to point out, and I meant to do at the beginning and I forgot, is we are talking about the DOE Home Energy Score web interface. This is the way this works. If you're using a third-party software, so most of the technicians in the Connecticut program, most of this doesn't apply to you because you're not using this tool. I am going to get into some things that will affect you, but the majority of this is not, because this is not the interface that you're using. Excuse me. So just like you had before, you start doing your data entry. As before, you can see that we've streamlined things a little bit. We don't go from page to page anymore. When you open this up, each one of the groupings, which are still the same, will all be open. So you can just scan through this and enter your data. But you don't need to wait for it to go to the next page. Everything's already opened up. It's right here. You just scroll through and do your data entry. We have added some floor area data validations, and I'm going to show you how that works now. So it's based on the conditioned square footage, the number of stories above grade, and whether or not there's a conditioned basement and what the square footage of the conditioned basement is. So it accounts for that set of data, and it assumes that those things are all correct. If those are entered, then it's going to calculate what it thinks is the minimum square footage for the foundation and for the roof ceiling areas. And if you put in a number that it doesn't like, it's going to tell you about it. So in this case, we've got a one-story house, 1,000 square feet. And at this point, we haven't characterized the basement, the foundation yet. So if I put, a one-story house with 1,000 square feet, its foundation and roof has to be 1,000 square feet. It just has to be. If I put in something less than that, I'm going to get an error message. So it's going to tell me that doesn't fit with the information that you've already provided. Now, in this case, if I were to go in and tell it that I had a conditioned basement, we're going to do the basement first before we do the square footage. And then I tell it that that's 250 square feet. Sorry about that, 500 square feet. Then it's not going to have a problem with this number anymore. But let me undo that. Okay, so So it does, so in this case, the attic area is too small. It has to be at least 1,000 square feet for this house. Now, say I put in 1,000 square feet, so it's now happy. But in the foundation, where'd my foundation go? Oh, there we go. But in my foundation, I put 1,250 square feet. The roof has to cover the floor. You can't have a house where the roof does not cover the floor. So again, the tool is going to say, we've got a discrepancy here, and you need to go back and fix this before we can run a score. And obviously, the right answer is 1,000 square feet. Everything's happy, and you can move on. In the case of the people who are using a third-party software, so again, the people in Connecticut, those in Wisconsin, those of you who are not using this know who you are. This area check is going to work for you too. How it will work will be dependent on how your software provider set it up. It may be that it works just like this does. It tells you before you submit anything. If they have not gone to that effort, you may not get that error message until after you submit for the score. So it may be a case of you submit for the score and you get an error message back that tells you that the roof or the foundation areas are not right. So again, it's going to be dependent on what the software developer did to handle this new functionality as to what you're going to see. Your partner should tell you how that's going to work. I'm going to stop there and see if we've got any questions about that.
If you have any questions, feel free to type them into the chat log.
I'm going to take that as meaning we don't have any questions.
Not yet.
That's pretty good. I'm surprised. Anyway, so the rest of the data entry is the same as always. A few things are a little cleaner. There is an automated check to make sure that you've got the proper amount of the right information for multiple HVAC systems. If you don't, where's the second? If you don't have enough coverage on the floor for your, this one's set up so that, okay. So it's going to automatically correct you. If you put something in here, it's going to define the rest of it as being with the second system. Ducts, if you've got multiple ducts, it's going to do the same sort of check and validation. You have to have all 100% before the tool will run. So if you have ducts and you put in, it's going to tell you haven't, in this case, you haven't finished it. So that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And if you put in the right answer, then the error message goes away. If you put in the wrong answer, it's going to come back. Again, how this works for the third-party software users, it will be different. But again, you're going to get the situation where you will get an error back if the data doesn't align, if you don't have everything filled out.
Hey, Glenn.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got two questions about how cathedral or sloped ceilings or vaulted ceilings work, because they would be larger than the foundation area. That will be accepted, right?
Yes, you can have a roof that's bigger than the floor, but you can't have a roof that's smaller than the floor.
And one other question was about back to the entering a new address. That's on the first page. The question was, do you enter the new address and search from the first page?
Yeah, so you enter it here. Actually, as long as we're here, I'll go ahead and show you. let's do this one. So as part of the new interface, the new changes, we've implemented some what we call process flows. In other words, there are certain things you can and can't do depending on where you are. So in the case of a new assessment, if this truly is a new assessment, you're starting from scratch, there are only certain scores you can choose from. So it has to be either a test score, an initial score, or a pre-construction score. You cannot do a final score as the first score you enter for an address. So the system will limit you in what you can choose. Now, once you have an initial score, and I'll show you this in a few minutes, then you have a different set of choices. So you enter the address. It's going to give you a suggested address. If it doesn't like the one you provided, you can choose it. You can choose the address as you provided it, or you can close and re-enter. I would suggest in general, if it's not significantly different, if it's not the wrong address, choose the suggested address. We're still in a situation where, at least on the data side, the only way to effectively match two houses is using the address, and it works a lot easier and a lot better if those addresses are the same. So unless the address provided by the address check is wrong, I highly recommend you use that one. Okay, so that's the primary thing I wanted to point out in the new data entry is we've got some more live data validation. We are going to be validating the areas, and do recognize is that these are minimums. They can always be higher. House configurations are such that we can't really define the upper ends, but we can define the lower ends. We've put in the constraints where we can, but we can't do it everywhere. So you've now created a score. You went through you went through it as you always do. You got your summary view, and you told it to go ahead and generate the score, and you clicked that it was as you wanted it to be, and you got a score. And let me go back. So we got our score. Oh, wait a minute. Where the heck am I? Oh, that's good. Okay. So we got our score. Now we want to do. We need to do a corrected score. We need to do a final score. So you're going to open that report. You're going to open that using these vertical buttons on the right side. You're going to open this score. And we're going to end up here. Now we want to do a final score on this. Let me just work with this one, because this one I practiced with. The other one I don't know what I'm doing. So we're going to click on the copy button, and here we can choose our corrected, our final, or our alternative EEM. So let's say we want to do a final score on this one. We're going to click on that. It's going to do a little thinking, and then it's going to tell you that that's been successfully copied. You're going to click on that building ID number, and now you're going to get, this is that same house. If you open all of these up, in this case it doesn't open them all because you're going to edit some portion, not the whole. But if you open them all up, they would have all of this same data. So you've done your upgrade, you've done your improvements to the house. Now all you have to do is go in and make those changes where they apply. So maybe you did air seal, but you didn't do a blower door test. So okay, we're gonna click that we did the air seal, and we went from an R9 insulation to an R38 insulation, and let's say we sealed the ducts in the vented crawl space. So you go in, you make those changes, and then just like all of your previous scores, you're going to go in and you're going to validate that the entries are right. So again, we've air sealed the house. We've increased the attic insulation to R38. And we sealed the ducts. Where do we seal the ducts? We sealed the ducts. And we're going to generate a label. Now, I'm not going to wait for that to happen. But you will, what you will see then is that it will be included in the grouping. So we'll have the initial score and we'll have the final score. If there was an alternative score, that one obviously will show up as well. But what we then do so we've got our final score, we've got our initial score. Let's say that the assessor wants to show the homeowner the actual change. So this is where you started. We made those changes, and this is where you ended up. So in this case, we're going to go to, this is the final score. This was the after improvement score. And we're going to click on this display another view. Remember, guys, you don't have to absorb all of this right now. It's all going to be in the information that's provided to you, most likely on Monday. So you'll have all the information on how to do this. This is just the overview. So you click on display another view. Which one was our initial score? Our initial score was the 509. So we're going to choose the comparison 509, 145, 509. Now ignore the red. This is something that we're still fixing. This will come out green just like it always does. But you'll see now that on the right side, whereas before we had the list of recommendations, this now shows the comparison. So in the normal or in the previous report, this sort of report, the last page would say, see your assessor for the improvements. I don't remember exactly what it says, but it's something along those lines. Now it's actually going to show you the difference between the two runs. So again, there was no air sealing, the attic insulation was R9, and the ducts weren't sealed. Ignore the unofficial. This is just because I'm working in a test environment. The air sealing, we've done it. We've improved the insulation in the attic, and we've sealed the ducts. These are going to line up better under the headers too. As I said, we're still doing a few things that we still have to clean up. So now you can show the homeowner can see what was actually done, what improvements were made, what caused the change in the score.
Hey,
we still have the, yep, go ahead.
I was going to say, if you want to take a pause here and answer some questions, we've got a number of them.
Sure, with that.
This is a good time?
Might as well.
All right. Kip asked, did we lose the third duct option?
No.
That's just a matter of putting in correct percentage.
You just have to tell it. I was obviously moving too fast. Hold on, I'll show you. Hold on, I'll show you. So we've got errors here. So we're going to edit home. And if we go down to the HVAC and we tell it they're 3, we get 3.
All right. Jessica asked or commented, I heard that we are not derating equipment anymore.
No comment.
Okay. Not yet, at least.
There are some changes coming to the way we do things. We're not there yet, so we're not going to discuss that right now.
Okay. Adam asks, does the software actually save the data as you type?
Yes, it does.
Right. Brett asks, what happens if a different assessor is doing the final?
Then the partner has to create the the comparison report.
Okay. Yes, am I able to update the external ID on the corrected score copy?
Not at this time, but I got asked this question earlier today. I'm going to see what we can do to change that.
Okay, and along those same lines, Raymond asked, can we add an external ID after we have copied the initial to a final?
See previous answer.
Okay.
At this time, you can't. At this time, you cannot. Like I said, I'm going to, this is something I'll talk with our developers about and see what we can do. I don't know whether we can or not.
Okay. Thomas asks, what if you do an initial score and then sometime later you run a blower door? Will that be an alternative to add data?
You can run a corrected score that would have that would replace the no blower information with the blower information, unless of course you did that as if you did that as an air seal job and you want to run a final score, then you could apply it there.
Okay.
But you can't go. You still cannot go back and take an existing score and change it. If you want to change something in the data set, you have to do another run, whether it be a corrected run or an alternative EM or whatever's appropriate for your situation. But you cannot take a score for which a label has been generated and change it. Those are locked.
Right. Matt asks, will the scoring bins change with this new version of the tool? In other words, will a home that was scored today receive the same score next week?
Yes. We're not making any changes to the calculation methodology.
Okay, a couple more here. When changes are made to fields, can they be shown with an asterisk or different color so that we confirm what change we made or might have missed?
I'm sorry, I did not follow.
I'm not sure if I follow either, but when changes are made to fields, can they be shown with an asterisk or a different color so that we can confirm what was changed, what changes we made or might have missed?
I can look into it. Well, I'm not exactly sure how that would be implemented, because either you put asterisks on. My guess is that no, because the system doesn't know until it runs, and at that point it's too late. What I suggest you do is take your two runs in your summary view and compare them. If you line them up on the page and alter back and forth, you can look for the change. It'll show up. It'll flash. You'll see it. So at least in the short term, no, that's not something we can do. I can again ask the developers. In the short term, though, just open the two before you create that second run. Open your initial run and then just compare the two summaries side by side.
Okay. Still a couple more here. You want to keep going with the questions?
No, I'm good. I think we're doing all right.
Will this now support tankless water heaters and heat pump water heaters?
Not yet, but it's coming very soon. We do have some changes coming to the actual data entry elements shortly after this is released. I don't have a timeline yet, but that when we get there, it will support tankless. All
right. One of our assessors asks, basically, if he's using one assessor, he's got two assessor IDs. Using one ID, can he generate a score from the other ID? I'm thinking what he means is, can he copy and paste to his other ID?
No, you're still siloed with your assessor ID. You'll have a view for assessor ID 1, and you'll have a different view for assessor ID 2, and those do not cross.
Okay. Response to an earlier answer, you said partner would have to do a comparison if a different auditor does the initial from the final. However, when creating a new assessment, the final won't be available for that different assessor than the original. How would this be handled?
This is why you guys look at it. That's a very valid question that I will have to go back and think through. Now, what I should have thought of and did not.
Thomas has come back with another question. So will it not be frowned upon to use corrected to input blower door data post initial run?
No. If you have better data, now again, if you went in and you did an initial assessment, and the only thing you've done is somebody's gone back and done a blower door test, and the house is still the same, and you just want to update it with the blower door information, then corrected is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. If you've actually made improvements to the house and done a blower door test, then you should use the final.
Okay, I think that's it for the moment.
Okay. So we'll just close this out a little bit. Just a couple more things to do here. You know, you can still open this in a PDF. And, you know, depending on what your partner chose, it's going to look the same way as it always has. Nothing's changed there. And again, the email choice is still here, so you can provide that directly to your customer if you so choose. And then back to the dashboard. And then if you need to get back to the portal, so back to the place where your assessor information is, your login and all of that, just click on the drop downs and back to your portal page, where it might be that you need to edit your account, or you know, the resources are all still in the same place there. So that's under your assessor tools and the portal. So I think that covers the highlights for the assessor. Covers everything on my list. So now we're going to hope that the partner stayed up while I was working through the assessor. And this one's going to look very much the same. Again, you've got the same sort of filters. Again, it'll open the same way as when you last left it. You have the ancestry. Excuse me. The ancestry view to open and close these. If you want to just look at one of them in particular, then just click on the drop down. This includes all scores under your partnership. So they are all here, whether they be an initial score, an alternative, a final, a QA, a pre-construction, a test. Yeah, the tests are here too. So everything created by your assessors is going to show up in the partner view. Much like the assessor, you can do the same sort of, well, that's not going to work. The same comparison view that they do. And click the right one. So you start with the latest one and put in the earliest ones. So we're looking for 5 of them. So it works the same way as the other one. You're going to get the same outcome here as we did before, because it's the same house. And again, the PDF, the email, all of those things still are the same, apply. the data export falls under your partner tools. So same thing as we've seen before, where you just put in your start date and end date. I think this will run pretty quickly, so I'll go ahead and run it. If I can type right. And so it runs a lot faster now than it used to. This should look familiar to those of you who are doing data exports. The explanation for the fields and all of that are still in the same place back here under in the portal, under the partner packet. All of this documentation is still here. The explanation for the data downloads is here. So that explains all the headers and so on. So that's not new. That's just a reminder that it's there. We'll go back to our dashboard. Oh, shoot. Okay. The dashboard updates are running a little slow. The new feature for the partners is the ability to go back and void a score. So if an assessor, so the sort of the primary example of this would be if an assessor entered an incorrect address. So they typed the address wrong. They put in 1234 Main Street and it's 123 Main Street. If you do a corrected score for that, you go in and you say corrected and you put in 123 Main Street, well, there is no initial score that says 123 Main Street. It's 1234 and there's no connection between those two scores. So now what the partner would do in that instance then is they need to void that incorrect score. So go in here, you click on the box next to the score that needs to be voided. That opens up this update selected building space. Change it to void assessment type, the ones that have clicked, and you can click more than one. I hope you don't have to do this very often. But click that, and then click the update. It's not going to show up on its own. You'll need to click the dashboard again to get that to refresh. And you'll see that one is now void. If by some chance you happen to void one in when you didn't mean to, let us know. We can undo that. But the thing is, though, once that score is voided, the assessor should then use the initial assessment type for the new score, the quote unquote the correct score, the one that has the right address. We don't want to do this for in place of corrected scores. In other words, if somebody makes a mistake on the data entry for a home energy score, we don't want to void the initial score just to avoid doing a corrected score. Aside from anything else, it'll probably drive you nuts. I know it will make me crazy if I'm trying to keep track of things. So this is strictly for a case where it's a higher level mistake. The address, the original address is incorrect. Maybe to a lesser extent, I'm not sure because I haven't figured out all of the potential ramifications of it. But if the standard address should be SE and the assessor put in Southeast, I'm not sure if we gain much by that change. But if your jurisdiction needs one or the other and it's not being entered that way, we probably ought to talk before we go too much further down the road. So that's the partner dashboard. As I said, not a whole lot of things have changed here. You can generate the ad hoc reports as you were before, and that's between any two reports with the same address. If you happen to choose one backwards, so if you say you picked an initial score and so when you create these scores, you have to go to the last one you want to compare to. So if you've got an initial, an alternative EEM, and a final, and you want to compare the final to the initial, then you would open the final score and then compare it to the initial score. If you happen to do it the other way, then you should see the red, because it's going to say that you're comparing them backwards. So the initial came first, the initial came second, and the final came first. So that should be a red flag, for better or worse, that something doesn't look quite right. Any questions? Did we get any questions from the partners?
Yeah, there's a couple of questions here. Can partners have the ability to generate an alternative score or correct it if the homeowner wants to see a comparison without having to ask the assessor to correct?
Only if the partner is an assessor.
Okay. And then we've got a couple from assessors still. These are kind of catch up from before.
Okay.
Can these, I imagine he's referring to the scores, can these be used in lieu of HERS for energy efficiency measures?
No. That's a fairly deep dive, and I'm not going to go into the details of why, but the short answer is no.
Okay, will this now let you enter dual fuel systems, that is gas furnace combined with heat pump?
No, you're going to have to wait until the end of the year for that one. We are working towards some more esoteric sort of systems, and those will come the end of this year or early next year. So the short answer, again, not now.
Okay. Does the update include raising the cathedral ceiling R value above 30?
Not yet. Again, that will be something that comes around the end of the year.
All right.
Just let me address that a little further, though. Just so you know, the difference between an R30 and an R38 in energy performance is not big. If you're interested, send me an email, and I'll show you what the difference is.
Okay. Would an HVAC cleaning showing a higher efficiency rating be considered a corrected or a final? And also, what if updates later on after the final rating, what happens to the first final? Will the system show more than one final if that was the case?
Okay, so let me try to address the first one first. The cleaning would only apply if you actually are doing combustion efficiency tests. So if you should use the guidance provided in the tool for defining the energy efficiency. So yes, if they did a cleaning, so then you could go in and you could change it to maintained and enter the updated efficiency. And yes, that could be a corrected score. As far as working after a final score, if you've actually, if mistakes were made in entering the data and you need to correct that information, then that should be a corrected score, and you've got a final and a corrected, and all is well and good. If you have multiple instances of improvements, so maybe you have a staged improvement. So this year we're going to do air sealing and attic insulation, and next year we're going to do HVAC work, and the year after that we're going to do foundation insulation or something like that. Each one of those could be a final score. So each one of those improvements would be an improvement to the house. You can have multiple final scores. You should not have multiple initial scores. You can have multiple final scores if there were multiple upgrades.
Okay. Can the dashboard be customized, or is it a static interface? In other words, can the score be made smaller or moved? Can you move the score with improvements to another page, etc.?
The way the report is displayed is based on your partner's choice. There is some customization available, but your partner has chosen how they want the report to look. If you've got feedback about how you think it should look, you should contact your partner.
Okay, but otherwise, the dashboard itself is not customizable either, is it?
No, the dashboard is as it is.
Brian asks, is the QA score done in the partner dashboard, or can it be done in the assessor dashboard as well?
No, we're going to show you QA in a minute.
All right, a couple more here. Please explain more about ad hoc reports by partners.
That just means you can generate a report between any two scores in the dashboard in your partner view. So, am I in a partner view? Yeah, I'm in a partner view. So, you can choose any two reports that have the same address. So in this case, anything in this grouping or in this grouping, you can choose any two scores to create a report that compares those two. So again, we go out to our final report here. And then I can generate any report I want amongst these three, because these three all have the same address. One thing I didn't point out earlier, and I should have with the assessors as well, is there is a no recommendations report. So, for example, maybe you've done a bunch of improvements to the house, and you just want to show the homeowner that they've done a good job. Give them a pat on the back. You don't want to suggest that maybe there's a whole bunch of new, additional stuff to do. So the no recommendations report will provide you just with the existing score, and then the 4 pages of home facts. There is no recommendations page. I don't know if how many of the partners are using that, but that is available on any official score. Hopefully that answered your question.
All right.
If it didn't, talk again.
2 more here. We recommend R49 for attic insulation in Pennsylvania, and EPA Energy Star goes as high as R60. Will you increase your recommendation for our region?
The home energy score recommendations are based on cost effectiveness. So it's a 10-year cost effectiveness number, and it's based on the estimated energy savings and the state average utilities, based on state average utility rates, and the cost of improvement is based on a national average installation cost. So when those numbers come up to be less than a 10-year payback, it gets listed in the recommendations. If it doesn't come as a 10-year payback, it will not, in which case you need to do an alternative EEM report. So you will go in and create that second run. You'll copy your, we'll go through that right quick. I think we're getting tight, but let me go ahead and do this right quick. So you take your initial score. We're going to copy it. We're going to make it an alternative EEM report. Again, we're going to click on the one that it creates. And if you want your roof and your insulation up to the R49 or the R60, you're going to click it here. You're going to there you go. Yeah, okay. And then you're going to do your summary just like you did before. And then your alternative report is going to show the comparison between those two. So just like we talked about before, it's going to show the score based on the initial score and your alternative EEM. So you can do it that way if you're not happy with the results provided by the home energy score. We don't. Our decision is based on cost effectiveness only, and we can't account for things like local rebates, and we do use very general utility rates and installation costs. So I'm not going to suggest to you for a minute that, especially that the installation costs reflect what they are for you in your area.
All right. 2 quick questions. Are there limits to how many alternative reports an assessor can generate?
No.
And in a future update, would it be possible to integrate the calculator into the data entry field for ease of access?
That would be a very nice thing to do. I don't know if we can or not. Well, I'll put that to our developers.
And I think that covers all the questions so far.
Okay, well, I probably need to go ahead and do our QA and mentor dashboards, and then if anything else comes up, we will cover those in extra time. So for whoever asked about the QA, we have your own dashboard now. So in this case, much like the partner role, you're going to see all of the stores for which you're responsible for QA. One of the things I forgot to tell you, on the partner side, under the new user, when you go in and you add your new users, the assessor candidates, one of the things is going to be receives QA from provider, and you're going to click who provides the QA services for your partnership. So in the case of most of our partners, that's going to be themselves. But in the case of some of our partners, they outsource that. So they will choose who it is that's providing that QA service, which then drives the QA and mentors dashboards. So as a QA, you're going to see all of the assessments for which you're responsible, for which you may do QA. Again, the same ancestry view shows up here, so you click things on and off as you are so inclined. You do have a new sort of, and this works, the primary, so these checks and these clocks, the checks indicate that a QA score has been done. For that, it's a little redundant to hear, but it kind of helps because it's a quick look. The clock means somebody is working on a QA for this. So if you have multiple QAs working under a QA providers, QA individuals, QA assessors is the word I'm looking for, you can avoid duplicate effort here. So you can see that somebody else has already done a QA on this house. I don't need to do it there. Maybe I need to do it on another one. But to do the QA on this, similar to I waited too long, and this one's the one that takes the longest to start up. But much like the assessor copy and paste function, the QA and mentor copy and paste works very much the same way. The only difference is that the fields are blank. So the QA still has to enter the data from scratch, but now those assessments are tied to one another in the dashboard so that you can see that which ones have been done and which ones haven't. if you don't follow that convention, then things are going to get disconnected in here, and you won't be able to track it as readily. Where did that go? I got to do that again. So say we want to do a QA on this one. As you can see, these little boxes are highlighted with the little houses are highlighted with a QA. And so it opens up. It's going to match the address exactly. If there was a reference ID, that would be in here as well. And then the report itself will look very much like the comparison reports we've talked about with, well, that's a bad choice, that we've talked about with the other views. See what this one looks like. I meant to open one of these and obviously I didn't do it. Try one more, see what happens if it doesn't show up the way I want it to. Okay, so this one, and this one's backwards, that's why it's red. But much like the comparison report, it's going to show you where the differences are. And so this one had some significant differences, so you got a lot of them here. You'll see this bleeds over. We're working on getting that fixed. But this will provide the QA assessor a side-by-side comparison of what the differences are. So as a QA provider or QA assessor, we know that the score has to be within 1 point. Otherwise, we need to do a closer review, figure out where the differences are, and if the assessor is incorrect, the score needs to be regenerated. So our comparison page down here will show us where the differences are. This one had a lot of differences, so we've got a lot show up here. If there are only 3 differences, only 3 differences will show up here. So you can drill into where the problems are, the primary problems are. So hopefully this makes things a little bit easier for the QAs to track what's going on, what scores are they responsible for viewing, similar sort of. And then for the mentor is still broken. For the mentor, it's very similar. The only difference with the mentor is that there is no connection between the 2 scores, or because of the possibility for a group mentoring where we have one mentor and there are multiple mentees. Then for the mentor, it becomes very complicated to attach one mentor's score to multiple mentees' score, and basically we kind of gave up on that one. So those are not connected. The QA or the mentor can do the similar sort of comparison report to see what the differences are. The one thing to keep in mind, and so this is partner dependent, and it's up to you how you do it. In order for the mentor dashboard to really work to its best effectiveness, the score being created by the mentor should be labeled initial, and the score being created by the mentee should be listed as mentor. That way the mentor will actually see all of the scores created by mentees. If you don't do it that way, if you have the assessor, the candidate, the mentee assessor creating the initial score, there's nothing wrong with that. The only problem is that the mentor will not be able to track it in their dashboard. So I know that having the initial, the first score by the mentee being labeled mentor is a problem for maybe 1 of our or 2 of our programs, so they may elect not to follow that protocol. It's strictly up to the partner, but if the mentee is using the mentor assessment ID, the mentor dashboard works a whole lot. Works a lot better. Is better able to show the mentor what needs to be done. I'm sorry I wasn't able to show that on here. We will get updated documentation, and in the case of the QA and the mentor, new documentation on how all of this works. Once you take a look at it and you got questions, certainly get back to us. Eric, any more questions?
A couple more. Lauren asks, this is referring to the QA score. She said it looks like this one had many differences, but it's still within 1 point. Is it red because it doesn't pass the QA?
No, in that case it was red because it's backwards. It will only show up red when there's 2. That was actually an old score. I should not have called that one up. That was when we were still having problems. It will show up red when the point difference is 2.
Okay.
2 or more. I'm sorry. If it's more than 1, then the QA score will show up as red.
Okay, and then we got a question: are assessors and scores assigned to a certain QA? I think it means to say, or can it be handed off to other QAs?
QAs are at the partner level, not at the individual level. So if you are a QA working for an organization, any QA in that organization can do a QA on any official school. So it's not something that you have to hand off. That's the point of the checks and the clocks, is so you can see where somebody's done it or where somebody might be working on one. If you need to do a QA, you should choose one of the ones that don't have those little icons. At least I think that's the question you're asking.
Yeah, I think that's. And then for an exterior QA provider, if 5% of the scores is 5.3, do they need to review 5 or 6 scores?
Shoot me in the head if I ever get that picky about that. No, I've got bigger fish to fry. And we also only check it quarterly. And as long as you're close and you don't consistently fall behind, then the difference of 1 or 2 scores is not going to cause me any heartburn.
Okay. Is there a new assessor calculator coming?
When we release some new training, then there will, but the current one will continue to work. It works with this. There's no changes in the way the calculator works and this interface.
Okay, and then I can answer this one. There was a question: is the entire webinar presentation available to rewatch somehow? Yes, we are recording this, and we will be posting it later this week to our Home Energy Score website, and we'll send out an email to let everybody know where to find that posting. Let me see. We've got another one just came in. Can you tell me how often I have to perform a score in order to keep my ability to keep scoring? Okay, I can answer that. It's 180 days. As long as you score a home within 180 days, you'll stay active. So,
and that you also need to validate with your partner, because we've got 1 or 2 partners who are talking about constraining that further. So the DOE's requirement is 180 days. Your partner may have a different one.
Okay. And someone asked, are we still using the year 2017 for the calculator? That is only appropriate for the training, not for the real world. So, real world use of the calculator, you should always use the current year, 2019. And then Lauren has a question here, but I'm not sure. Does that mean the new sim training? I guess she's referring to the calculator being tied to new training. Yes, that refers to new sim training, which we hope to have out within the next month or so. No promises.
But don't hold us to it.
Scott had a short question, just said mobile scoring tool.
No, we don't have it. Some of our partners are working on it. It's not something that is on our radar. That's a significant cost, and we don't have the budget for it at this point.
Okay, I've got no more questions unless anybody's writing and sending one in. Just one just came in. What tools are there to help us with marketing as home energy score assessors?
Talk with your partners. That's really outside of this discussion.
Okay.
Well, I thank everybody for their attention. Eric, I thank you immensely for your support here. We certainly did better than we did the last time we tried this. So I appreciate your help. And any questions, let us know. And feedback is always welcome.
Right. All right. Thank you, Glenn. And thanks everybody for joining. We'll sign off.
Bye.